right, welcome to the last installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews for 2018. Yes, indeed, Christmas is almost upon us at the time of recording. Um,
hmm
and on this occasion, well, no, we don't have any Christmas games. Like, uh, we've had
That's
a few.
probably for the best.
Yeah, like what we do have on tap this week. First up is The Room 3. Not to be confused with any Tommy Wiseau movies. The Room,
Yeah.
yeah, The Room is a series of puzzle games by Fireproof Games. Indeed, we interviewed their co-founder Barry Mead. What, about a month ago? I mean, maybe a month and a half at this point. Oh, it's like when you, it all kind of blends together after a while.
hmm
The point is, it was a recent interview, and The Room 3 is not the most recent Room game. I should point that out. The thing is, The Room 3 just got released on PC on Steam. That's the version we're showcasing here today. Like, indeed, the Room series got its start on mobile phones, specifically the iOS. Like the first one was created in 2012, if I'm recalling correctly. So it's a series that's been around for a while. Indeed, The Room 3 has been around for a while. The initial version, the mobile version, came out in 2015, November of 2015. So yeah, you know, it's been out for a while if on your smartphone. I suppose the first question is, why would you want to get maybe the PC version of the Room 3 if you already own a mobile device? Well, graphics is what it really comes down to, I'd say, because
Plus, some people prefer using a mouse over using their fat fingers.
I suppose so, but having played through not just this game, but I beat the Room 1. I played through some of the Room 2, but I didn't like I had to abandon it because of other, I had games to review. The point of order is I've played all three of the Room games on PC, and um it's still like it's a good port, don't get me wrong, but it still suffers from translation issues. Like sometimes there's not a good approximation for the action you're required to do on screen because
Because you can't do dual touch thingy.
well, it's more um, like turning a crank, for example. Turning a crank with your finger is a much smoother experience than replicating it with a mouse. That may seem like a small thing, and on its own it is, but when you're doing after doing several of those, maybe not in a row, but you know and more to the point, they're fiddly. Like moving like pulling down a lever it doesn't have as much finesse as you would like it to have. you know it's at those moments you do see this game was initially made for a touch screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and that's probably going to have a bearing on my ultimate recommendation here. But in terms of why you would want the Room 3 on Steam, it's because, well, the graphics. Um, the the Room series looks a lot better on PC. To spell it out here, it's like recalling the interview. Fireproof Games redoes all of their Room games for the platform in mind. Like the Switch version of the Room is based off the PC, not the mobile version. So it looks a lot nicer. You know, Outside of that, as far as I can tell, it is the same game that released on mobile devices 3 years ago. So if you've already played through them, there's probably not a huge incentive to do so again. But for those who haven't touched a Room game, okay, first of all, do not buy the Room 3. I'm like, maybe maybe this is obvious, maybe it isn't, but The Room 3 is not a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this isn't.
This is actually a series with a progressing story / scenario, or
Yes. It's like I know Barry downplayed story in the interview, focusing more on like the puzzles, but story is pretty. It's not integral, but the storyline in The Room 3 is one like you're in the middle of a story. Okay, there's no other way around it. Like you're dealing with you're coming out of the events of The Room 2. There's stuff going back from The Room 1, like the null element. Like The Room 1 was all about discovering what the null element does. But The Room 3, it's like you're not going to be lost if you start with this one, but it makes no pretenses to say, hey, this is a starting point, or you can get by without any back knowledge, whichever one of those it is. But you are dealing with an ongoing storyline here, and also the Room series is one of progression and escalation. What was once an entire chapter in the first Room game, what is a portion of a chapter in The Room 3, like literally. The Room 1 was all about individual puzzle, or maybe a couple of puzzle boxes. The Room 3, it's escalated to its namesake. Like, it's got puzzle boxes, but the grand puzzle is quite literally not just a room, but a series of rooms. Like, you'd have like 2 or 3 connected. And, you've got to go back and forth to do puzzles in one to another. So that's another thing to keep in mind, depending on what you're looking, because The Room 3 has all of the telltale signs of sequel escalation, to the point where there are only 6 chapters as opposed to like 7 in the Room 2, but these chapters are much longer. I put in about 10 hours, and that was just the initial playthrough, because The Room 3 also does something new in the sense that it's got multiple endings. The first 2, well, I guess I can't say I don't know about The Room 2, although I don't think I saw any achievements. Anyway, I know The Room 3 has multiple endings, and indeed, it's one of those, you've got to get the bad end in order to open up the good or best endings. Yeah, let me see. And also, another big part of the Room games is the lens. The lens is something that allows you to peer into shimmering objects and do visualization puzzles previously. Here it's gotten a bit of an upgrade. It's shifted away from those and into small space puzzles. What it allows you to do in storyline is it allows you to shrink down and get into contraptions and manipulate puzzle inside that space. It's more aesthetical than anything else, but it is a noted change. Let me see here. Also, in terms of structure, the Room 3 here is kind of like Mist Light, if I could put it the best way. Like, I suppose that might require some background on this that I really don't have time to get into, but you're basically going around a series of rooms solving environmental puzzles. Granted, it's not quite as, what's the word I want here? Invested as Myst. Like, thankfully there are no sound puzzles. And,
Those are usually a hard part of any puzzle game that has them.
Well, it's like sound puzzles are not good, and that's because not everybody can hear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if you're deaf, you're not really you're not really going to be able to pass that because obvious reasons. That being said, outside of the escalation of things, the core mechanics of the Room 3 are the same as they ever were. Like, you manipulate things, you place objects here, and you figure out the puzzles. And if you get stuck, there is a very robust hint system. It's kind of an internal invisible clues thing. That is to say, it usually has about, let's say, 3 entries to a clue. First is vague hint. Second is a bit more detailed. Third, basically, third will basically tell you what to do. Not all the time, but it's like if you don't want those hints there, you can turn them off or not activate them. I will say this game does suffer from a lack of direction at times. Maybe it couldn't be helped because there's so many things going on at once. But, sometimes the path forward is completely unrelated to what you were working on. Sometimes they'll show you what to do next. Sometimes they won't. And you may know what the end point is, but it's more a stumbling about to figure out which part you have to manipulate properly. I'm like, it's a minor annoyance in the grand scheme of things. Let's see. In terms of graphical fidelity, the game looks pretty good. It definitely benefits from the upscale in resolution. I mean, I know mobile phones are pretty powerful these days, but I'm like, these games, like the Room games, aren't built to showcase a phone screen or anything like that. So on mobile, like if you put them up side by side, you will see a noticeable difference in assets. That being said, everything looks clean. The art direction's pretty nice. Especially, I like the actual puzzle boxes the most. The music, a lot of ambient stuff. Outside of that, it's like the opening theme is pretty notable, if only because it's used across all 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of stuck in the brain space. And as far as the plot itself, well, how much I can go into...
I mean, puzzle games usually are kind of spoilery since they like to have some story puzzles too.
Well, it's like you're dealing with the machinations of being called the craftsman, who's basically claiming to be the mastermind behind everything that's been going on, and he wants your help, and your job is to the pyramid that's showcased in the title sequence is called a null pyramid, and you're supposed to grab these from an area. This is another way this is like Myst. It's like going into an age and retrieving something. Instead of book pages, it's the Fifth Element. I'm like, that's literally what it is, by the way. Like, in the first game, they flat out say this is the 5th element of legend, null. So, and yeah, that's basically what you got to do. And there are puzzle motifs, like getting into each areas plays out about the same. There are some variances. What is going to be different is things like going into the observatory or the watchtower. Like in the watchtower, your ultimate goal is to get the bell to ring 12 times, and so on and so forth. Like, I won't go into any more because that it may not be a grand elaborate plot with a lot of lore, but it's more plot heavy than you might think at first, especially if like compared to the first game. Let's see. Pricing. Well, okay, so I'm going to compare prices here. All right, so the Room 3 on Steam. The Room 3 is clocking in at $6 on Steam. So let me just pull up the iOS version here, see how much it is, or how it's structured, because a lot of mobile games are free, or the first chapter is free. Okay, the Room 3 is clocking in at $4. So yeah, there is a bit of a uptick in price in between the two of them.
That said, that's kind of a really high price for iOS.
It is. Like, it's it's like, it's not that much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it depends on how you feel about paying for different things on different consoles. And like you said, the graphics are better on PC.
Yeah. It's just, ultimately, I'd have to go with the mobile version, because I feel, the touchscreen controls are the way to go. Because, even though it's a good approximation, it's still an approximation of things. And you're gonna notice that not everything flows as smoothly as it should on PC.
Now, maybe if it had like full VR, like room scale type stuff with like, I think the Vive motion controllers.
I'm like, yeah, we're clearly the game didn't have that kind of budget.
Yeah. But I mean, if it ever gets something like that, or something later down the line comes, it might be a good idea to look at that than just single click.
I mean, I guess there's also the possibility of holding out for a Switch version, but who knows how long that would take?
Because didn't the first one just come to Steam? Or not Steam, Switch?
Yeah, the first one just hit the Switch like last month. So, and there's no timetable for the other Room games to hit that device. So it could be like 2 years from now. We could be seeing the Room 3.
Mm-hmm.
Also worth noting, the latest game in the series is the Room 4 Old Sins. That's currently already available on mobile. As far as us reviewing that, well, whenever it hits Steam, once again, it seems like it takes a long time for these games to hit different platforms, because it's not a straight port. They remake the assets for the platform, and that takes time, and they're not a large team. This is why interviews are helpful. They fill in gaps like these.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, as far as the Room 3 as a game, yeah, I really like this. Definitely the best Room game I've played. Up to this point. And given what's been how the line of progression goes, I am looking forward to playing the Room 4. It's just, if you're going to play, start at the beginning, and then, and really picking up all 3 room games on, say, Steam would cost at most right now $15, like maybe a little more. But it's like it's still not going to destroy your wallet picking up all these games, no matter what the platform. Anyway, on the arbitrary scale of arbitration, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Really solid game. Not an amazing. It's like I'd probably like it more if it were a proper point and click instead of a puzzle game stitched together by point and clicks. If that makes any sense. Like. Anyway. Any last thoughts about the Room 3 from my cohorts here?
Honestly, the big thing I'm not a big fan of with this is there's no option for subtitles, like full closed caption.
That is a problem.
Yeah. And like that doesn't seem like too much of a problem. That if they probably could add that in if they wanted to.
Well, it's also there's no actual speech here.
But like that's what I'm saying. Like captions of what's going on, like metal clicking or something like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like not just subtitles, like full-on legitimate captions.
Oh, okay. I see what you're
Makes
saying.
sense.
Yeah, that goes to what I was saying about the problem with sound puzzles in video games. Not everyone can hear. So, maybe that's something like because Fireproof Games is probably going to watch this, so maybe that's something they'll take into account.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But yeah,
anyway.
Overall, it's fine. Just, adding legitimate captions would be nice. And I don't like the way you move the camera, where you move, left to look right and whatnot.
Yeah, that actually. Yeah. I never liked the inverted thing either.
Just an option for us to flip it if we want to. That'd be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I believe that's technically smoother for phones, but we're not on a phone on PC. So it's most of my problems are just little things.
Yes. All right. So that'll about do it for the Room 3. Be sure to tune in after the break, our final review of the year, Dusk.